Good morning, guys. Hope you're doing well. Today I want to talk about this question: is it bad to be a relationship person? So here's the context. Hi, Arnav. I consider myself to be a relationship girl. For example, in my adult dating life over the last 5 years, I haven't been single longer than 6 months. In that time period, I've been in 3 relationships. They've lasted 6 months, a year and a half, and 2 years. I'm recently going through a breakup, and one of my friends brought up, my adult relationship history and said maybe you should try being single for a year. What do you think? Is it bad to be a relationship girl? This is a really interesting question. The first thing that I would say, just from a self-esteem perspective, is while you may be considered a relationship girl, from my perspective, I think you've done decently well given, in terms of screening your ex-partners, given that the shortest relationship was 6 months and the other two were over a year and a half, each. I think there's a flip side to this, which I think would be a lot more alarming, where, some people who consider themselves relationship girls, who think or believe they're not good at being single, and get into relationships that aren't really meant for them. So you might see, more, a lot more of a 4-month relationship or 6-month relationships, because they're getting into relationships with people out of the insecurity of being single. So that's one, compliment I would give to you. The caveat to that, obviously, is really the knowledge that you have. Advising people on relationships sometimes is tough from a third-party perspective, because it requires a ton of individual self-awareness, where an outside party can't help. So in this case, I think you've done decently well, because they've sort of been longer-term relationships, and so me interpreting that means that, they've been good guys or whatever, and haven't seemed like toxic situations. However, on the flip side of that is, I don't know what your mentality was from your end in getting into these relationships. They might be decent guys, but did your mentality of entering into the relationship come from a healthy perspective of having healed from the previous breakup fully, or was it, one of the individuals showed some sign of maturity or some sign of showing love to you, and then you immediately entered into the relationship? I, as a third party, can't really answer those questions. Only you have the answers to those questions. The second thing, and I think the main thing, is, from my perspective, you should be comfortable, and make sure you're comfortable being alone, being single, and loving yourself. As I kind of sort of previously stated, I think the negative characterizations of relationship girls or guys comes from the fact that they don't love themselves, or their self-esteem really isn't that high. And people may not say it that way, but it comes off that way. In the fact that they don't have enough belief in themselves to be alone for a long period of time, and thus they quickly enter into relationships to kind of cover up that wound of feeling single, or not feeling loved by someone. And so you know, I think the main thing that any person in a healthy and secure relationship would say is that, I and my partner lived fulfilled lives before we entered into our relationship, and that each of us just added more light and positive energy into our already fulfilled lives. So, I guess what I'm trying to say is make sure that aspect is good. There's no red flags in you necessarily only being single for 6 months, in the last 5 years. The red flags come from the questions of asking, do you love yourself? Do you have enough strength in yourself? Are you comfortable being alone? Are you comfortable being single? Can you block out all that noise? And do you have enough self-esteem? And again, those are questions that are, quite tough and require some digging. But those are only questions you can answer yourself. In terms of the timetable for the breakup and how long you should be single, again, I'm not a big fan of timetables. I think timetables are meaningless if you don't put in any work. In other words, someone can be single for 2 years after a breakup and still not be in a great mental state for entering into a new relationship if they don't put in any work. Whereas someone else going through a breakup can be ready for a new relationship in 8 months if they really put in the work, to heal and work on themselves. So what I would tell you is really take this time period to focus on healing from the breakup, processing the emotions that you're going through, the sadness of losing a partner, the emotions of feeling alone and vulnerable. Stick through that. It sucks, obviously, but you gotta, build up and gain your strength, and again, feeling comfortable being alone and single. And once you get to that spot where you think you're in a healthy place of, I love myself and I live a decently fulfilled life on my own, then you can start dating again. Putting in that work is not fun. You have to deal with emotions, you have to deal with working on yourself, you have to maybe deal with psychological elements of past relationships, and things like that. But in the long run, that's the best thing to do. Only by putting in the work will you get to a healthy mental and emotional state for your next relationship. So I hope these 3 things kind of help. Please let me know if there's any aspect of the question you don't think I answered. And yeah, hope you're doing well. Thanks, guys.